at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, the 27th of October 2021. Can I please remind you all to switch your phones to silent for the duration of the meeting? In addition, can I refer you to the protocols for remote meetings, which have been previously circulated? Namely, your microphone should be switched to mute unless you are speaking. The Democratic Services Officer will take a roll call at the start of this meeting of all members and officers. Should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, can you please indicate either via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand by Teams. I will assume that you have all read the paperwork before us today prior to the meeting. When speaking, please introduce yourself. I am Councillor John Warman, the Mayor. Jane, if you could take the roll call.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will read apologies first. We've received apologies from Councillor Aubrey, Councillor Causey, Councillor Clark, Councillor Crowley, Councillor Llewellyn, Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Chris Williams. So I will now go through the members who are present. Councillor Bamsey. Sorry, I can see, Mr. Mayor, I can see Councillor Clark is now present at today's meeting.
Right, okay.
Councillor Bamsey. Councillor Carl Clement Williams.
Yes, I'm here, Jane.
Councillor Stephanie Lynch.
Present.
Councillor Arthur Davis. Councillor Davis, Arthur Davis.
Present. Present.
Councillor Nicola Davis. Councillor Nicola Davis. Councillor Oliver Davis.
Present, thank you, John.
Councillor Ros Davis. Councillor Ros Davis. Councillor Carlin Edwards.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Jamie Evans. Councillor Freegard.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Goldsworthy.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Wyndham Griffiths.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Joe Hale.
Present, Jane. Sorry, Jane, I can see Chris Williams is actually on here, so you give his apologies.
Oh, yeah, I did. I received him, but I'll mark him now as present.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Councillor Sean Harris.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Harvey.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Nigel Hunt.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Steve Hunt.
I am here, Jane.
Councillor Hurley.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Chris James.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Hugh James.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Jones. Chris Jones.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Doreen Jones.
I'm here, Jane.
Councillor Hugh Jones. Councillor Jane Jones.
I'm present, Jane.
Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Rob Jones.
Here, Jane.
Councillor Scott Jones.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Noyle. Councillor Latham.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Dean Lewis. Councillor Lockyer.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lockyer. Councillor McGrath.
Present, Jane.
Councillor John Miller.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Sandra Miller.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Rydian Maisen.
Presennol, Jane, diolch.
Deputy Mayor.
Presennol, diolch yn fawr, thank you.
Councillor Paddison.
Present.
Councillor Penry.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Martin Peters. Councillor Rebecca Phillips. Councillor Mark Prothero. Councillor Lynette Purcell.
Present.
Councillor Sean Percy.
Present.
Councillor Saifra Harman.
Present.
Councillor Peter Rees.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Renkis.
Present.
Councillor Richards, Anthony Richards. Councillor Peter Richards.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Marcia Spooner. Councillor Spooner.
Present, Jane.
Councillor AJ to Anthony Taylor.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Rachel Taylor.
Present, Jane.
Mark, Mr Mayor is present. Councillor Whitelock.
Present, thank you, Jane.
Councillor Williams, you are now present.
Present, Jane. Apologies for the confusion. I had to call council this afternoon and one of my visits was my work, so I managed to make it in time. So sorry about the confusion.
Thank you. Councillor Wingrave.
Present, Jane.
Councillor Wood.
Present.
Councillor Woolcock.
Present all, Mr Mayor.
I'll now go on to officers. There's no members that are present that I haven't called. If you could raise your hands. Right, I'll go on to officers. Karen Jones.
Thank you.
Nicola Pierce.
Present, Jane.
Andrew Jarrett. Andrew Jarrett.
Sends his apologies, Jane, for today's meeting.
Thank you. Andrew Thomas.
Present, Jane.
Craig Griffiths.
Present, Jane.
Rhys George.
Present.
Stacey Curran.
Present.
Hugh Jones.
Yeah, present, Jane.
Nicola Blackmore.
No, not today. Apologies, Jane. Thank you.
Are there any officers that I have not called the name who are participating in the meeting?
Yes, Jane, it's Angela Thomas. I'm here for Andrew Jarrett.
Thank you, Angela. That's lovely. There we are, Mr Mayor. The roll call has been completed.
Thank you, Jane. Item 2, which is Mayor's announcements. I am sure members are aware of the recent death of Sir David Amos, Member of Parliament for Southend West, on Friday the 15th of October. I ask the Council to observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect and offer our sincere condolences to the family and friends. If you monitor silence, Jane, thank you. Thank you all. Council, we also have to congratulate Councillor Saif Rahman and family on the birth of a son. Congratulations. Also congratulations and well done to Olivier Rachel Thomas, 10 years old, from Talbot Ward, who recently returned from the World Karate Championships in Romania. Olivier achieved 4th place in the category in which he fought. And now go on to item 3, which is members' interests. Are there any interests to declare? Please indicate by raising your electronic hand via Teams or indicate via the chat function. And when called, state details. The Democratic Services Officer will then forward an electronic version of a declaration of interest form for you to complete and email back to the officer.
I can see no indications, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Now go on to agenda item 4. Public speaking at council meetings. I call upon Councillor Del Morgan, Chairman of Democratic Services Committee, to introduce the report.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Mr Mayor. As the report says, one of the requirements of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021 is that local authorities must establish ways of promoting and facilitating processes by which local people may make representations to the Principal Council about decisions before and after they are made. The Council already has a number of measures in place for the public to participate in decision making. Both elected members and the public have various rights to participate in the Council's democratic processes, and those examples are set out in this report today. One additional method, though, that would assist in allowing greater access for constituents to raise issues with the Council would be to provide the opportunity for members of the public to ask questions to elected members at meetings of Council. Accordingly, a draft protocol of public speaking has been prepared and is enclosed at Appendix 1 for members' approval. Members will note that it applies to full Council and to Cabinet and Cabinet boards. And although scrutiny members will be able to know and view the questions that are to be put, scrutiny committees in the first instance are excluded from the scheme in order to ensure that scrutiny remains the members' forum to scrutinise the decision-making of the executive. Members of the Democratic Services Committee considered the draft protocol at their meeting of the 11th of October this year, and now commends this public speaking protocol to Council for approval, with the aim that it will come into effect from the 3rd of January 2022. This will enable the Council to provide a translation of the scheme and publicise it via our social media platforms. Can I place on record my thanks to the Democratic Services Committee for their comments and views on this report, and I look forward to our continuing work on public participation that we will embark on in the coming months. So if there are any questions, either I or the Head of Legal and Democratic Services will gladly respond. Diolch, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Members, are there any questions or comments? Please raise your electronic hand or indicate via the chat function, and I will call upon you in turn.
I can see no hands raised,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I now refer members to the recommendations on page 7 of the report and the integrated impact screening assessment as Appendix 2 to the report. Can I ask for a proposer and a seconder?
I move, Mr Mayor.
I second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Council, if you do not indicate to the contrary by raising your electronic hand, it will be assumed that you are in favour of the recommendations.
I can see no hands raised, Mr. Mayor, so that recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. Go on to agenda item 5. Members Induction 2022 and Diversity in Democracy Programme. I call upon Councillor Del Morgan, Chairman of Democratic Services Committee, to introduce the report.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Once again, as Chair of Democratic Services Committee, I wish to present to Council the report on Member Induction 2022 and Diversity in Democracy Programme. I'd like to thank both officers and members of the Task and Finish Group for their detailed work on these items. Now, whilst the draft induction programme may well evolve considerably between now and next year, members can see the broad outline of what we are proposing. And in terms of the action plan for diversity in democracy, members will see that a comprehensive set of actions have been drawn up in order to encourage more and more individuals to consider putting their names forward for election. The report otherwise is self-explanatory. So if there are any questions, again, either I or the relevant officer will respond. And the recommendation is to note the two documents. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Members, are there any questions or comments? If you please raise your electronic hand to indicate via the chat function, and I will call upon you in turn. And Councillor Peter Rees, please.
Just a typo, Chair, in paragraph 1, it says that the government election will take place in 2012 and it should read 2022.
Yes.
That's on page 21, Chair, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Peter Rees. Thank you. We've noted that. Thank you for your comments. I cannot see any other questions. I now refer members to the recommendations on page 24 to 25 of the report. This item is just for noting. Members, no decision is required. We now go on to agenda item 6, which is the 2023 review of parliamentary constituencies, the initial proposals. I call upon the Chief Executive, Mrs. Karen Jones, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you say, the report is before Council this afternoon to give elected members the opportunity to contribute to the Council's response to this consultation. I won't read through the report because I think it's self-explanatory, Mr. Mayor, and the link is there as well to the Boundary Commission's own report. You'll see that the background and the rules that the Commission are required to take into account are summarised in the covering report. But what we have done for members' consideration is to draw out some of the implications of these proposals, which are contained there in the body of the report. So we would welcome members' views on those points that we've drawn out for members to consider today, and also to take on board any further views that members feel strongly should be incorporated into the Council's response. So the Council's response starts at paragraph 42 in the report, Mr. Mayor, if members are looking for the section that I'm referring to, and finishes at paragraph 59. If members want to clarify anything that's in the report, I'm sure Rhys, myself or Craig will endeavour to help, but obviously they're not our proposals, they are the Boundary Commission's proposals, and what we're asking for today is members' views as to what we think about these proposals.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Members, are there any questions or comments? Please raise your electronic hand to indicate via the chat function, and I will call upon you in turn. And Councillor Arwyn Woodcock, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I thank you for your indulgence and for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important matter this afternoon. I'd like to congratulate the officers for the report and the consideration this afternoon. However, I must point out that in respect of the proposed Brecon and Radnor constituency, the proposals also affect the Upper Amman Valley as well as Swansea Valley, which is stated in the report. I also completely concur with the comments in the report, Mr. Mayor, about the disproportionate effect these proposals will have on Wales as a result of the proposed reduction in parliamentary constituencies from 40 to 32, a 20% reduction. This cannot be considered to enhance effective representation and will diminish engagement in the democratic process. My specific objections, however, is towards the proposal to transfer the area of the Upper Amman and Swansea Valley from the Neath constituency into Brecon and Radnor. The Upper Amman and Swansea Valley areas have traditionally been part of either the Neath or Gower constituencies, and this proposal would sever the long-standing affiliation that these areas have enjoyed with both constituencies. Indeed, the initial proposal appears not to take account of such vitally important community link, but merely a method of acquiring the electoral numbers to satisfy the UK electoral quota of electors. Mr. Mayor, in proposing that the Upper Aman and Swansea Valley areas form part of Brecon and Radnor constituency, a constituency that is arguably already too large geographically, it would result in an even larger parliamentary constituency, which would not serve the electorate or elected representatives well. Indeed, according to the RSC route planner, the distance between Trebanus in the south of the proposed new constituency to Begwildy, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sir, so bear with me there, Mr. Mayor. The distance between Trebanus to Begwildy in the north is just over 79 miles and takes 1 hour 58 minutes to travel. The council that will have responsibility for administering elections will be Powys. The distance from Trebanus to County Hall in Llandrindod Wells is 60.46 miles and involves a journey of 1 hour 28 minutes. Now, these distances and travelling times are based on travelling by private car. Travelling by public transport is, at best, extremely difficult, at worst, virtually impossible. Clearly, therefore, this proposal is entirely undemocratic and unworkable, and falls completely foul of Rule 5 in Schedule 2 of the 1986 Act, as outlined in this report, which refers to special geographical considerations, including in particular the size, shape, and accessibility of a constituency, any local ties that would be broken by changes in constituencies, and the inconvenience attendant on such changes. Mr. Mayor, for all these reasons, I would respectfully suggest that this initial proposal is scrapped and that a completely new arrangement is put forward in respect of the Upper Aman and Swansea valleys, a proposal that would see these areas remain within the Neath constituency. Mr. Mayor, perhaps these additional comments could be added to the Council's response. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harry Woodcock. Yeah, thank you. I got a Lynette Purcell. Are you going to speak, Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, first of all, I concur with everything that Councillor Woolcock has said. A superb speech, pointing out many of the issues that we are concerned about. I was particularly pleased to see bullet points 55 and 56. 55 could be summed up by saying, who are our representatives? The people are confused enough as it is, but if they think that the council is in Neath and yet their MP is in somewhere in the wilds of Powys, they are going to be even more confused than they are already. One thing that I can't find specified in this is any reference to cultural differences. If we just take Pontedour, for example, which is a very typical post-industrial valleys town, because of that, although quite often the people of Pontedour, Neath and Talbot have disagreements with each other, there is a similarity. They are these, well, Port Talbot definitely isn't post-industrial, but this concept of the post-industrial valleys town, it's a completely different cultural concept to what you have in basically a farming communities in Powys. We have some farms in my particular ward of Pontedour, but very, very much in the minority. And I just cannot see how you can create a constituency which is so widely diverse. And I cannot see an MP representing a basically farming rural constituency understanding the issues of places like Trebanus, Allwen, Pontedour, etc., or your communities up in the Aman Valley, Arwen. So totally support what Arwen has said. It makes no logical sense whatsoever to lump these places in with Powys. And I would like to see possibly added to this report some reference to the cultural identity of these communities, where they associate themselves with, and their historical backgrounds. So basically everything that Arwin said, plus a few extras. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Stephen, did you indicate?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I may, I'm sure Arwin has said it all and Lynette has backed it up. I'm happy to second Councillor Woolcock's proposals to be added to the response. But can I just ask a further question? Obviously, I appreciate the report is self-explanatory and the information is there, and this is the parliamentary boundaries. However, if this actually goes forward, the boundary commissioners in future, I would probably suggest they would be looking to take the areas or the wards out of Neath and Talbot at a future date. And that would be catastrophic for the work that not just Arwin and the communities there have achieved under Neath and Talbot County Borough Council. I know it may not be, Mr. Mayor, for this meeting, but I mean, I think we have to think at looking at a bigger picture for the future, and perhaps in the response and references, you know, it may need to be highlighted so that we have recognised the possibility of this happening in the future. But as far as Arwin goes, he's spot on as always, and I certainly support him 100%, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sure the Chief Exec will acknowledge this when she comes back after members have spoken. But thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Doreen Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I know I'm English and I don't apologise for it, but I think it's an insult on the people of Neath to be lumped alongside, just put us in Swansea, whatever, and Neath. Neath is a historic town. I'm very proud of Neath, to be honest with you, and I'm proud to live in Neath. And I think just to lump us as an addition to Swansea, I think a lot of people will be very annoyed about that as well. I endorse everything that has been said already. I picked up on paragraph 55 and 56. People are still confused today and assume that Skewin is still a part of Neath because it was in the old borough days. I still get asked, well, why is Skewin in Aberavon and not in Neath? So goodness knows what this extra well, I don't know, gerrymandering is going to do. I will call it gerrymandering because it is gerrymandering, but I don't know what this is going to do to the average resident out there. I would say that people are going to be highly insulted once they start getting the grips with this. And I think mention should have been made of the cultural, like Lynette has already said, the cultural and diversity. Just the Neath in with Swansea, I think, is absolutely horrendous, to be perfectly honest. There's only four or five wards, I think it is, in Swansea, and yet the whole of Neath is lumped as a side effect. So I don't know whether that can be added to what Arwin is already suggesting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Carolyn Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Woolcock for that excellent speech, according to speech. I agree absolutely with everything that everybody said, and I agree with Councillor Jones too about the identity of Neath Talbot. It seems as if they want to erase us into the background. Like her, I'm, you know, Valley girl, I'm very proud of it, and we do have to retain this heritage. So I fully support all the comments that have been made. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Chief Exec, do you want to come back now at this stage, or do you want me to wait for any members to finish with any questions they have and then respond at the end?
I can come in at the end, Mr. Mayor. I'm making notes
Okay.
of what members are saying, if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Councillor Spooner, please. Indicated.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I can't agree. You won't be surprised to hear that coming from Ross and in these proposals, I'm not going to disagree with anything that has been said prior to this. I'm just going to add on what Councillor Jones was saying about being called Swansea and Neath. Aberhonddu and my Myselfed, with no mention of sort of Swansea Valley at all, is, well, it's contempt really for our areas. We will be swallowed up if this goes ahead. You know, there is no recognition of our sort of area or what's going on. When I first heard these proposals a while back, I honestly thought it was ludicrous, and nothing I've seen since has made me change my mind. I do have concerns that, yes, these are parliamentary constituencies. How long will it be that it's brought through all of our sort of areas, whether it's council, what will happen with the Senedd constituencies? So I have great concerns over it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths, please. You indicated.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everything that's been said, and I would suggest, in short, we should reply to it. Thank you, no thank you, think again. Okay. And leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nigel Thomas Hunt, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to, on page 61, number 33, it talks about the Aberafan constituency, linking in with Porthcawl and, you know, several wards on the west side of Bridgend. I just feel that Glencorw, Cymru and Gwynfi, I think the residents up there might be, the residents up there might think that they're the only Valley community in this constituency. And also the buses from Cymru to my Steg and the Bridgend areas every 20 minutes, whereas to Talbot it's every 2 hours and to Neath every 2 hours. So I think that says a lot, really. And I don't know what the members are saying up there, but as someone from Aberafan, I think that they might feel a bit isolated with this. So they would probably be better off with the Maesteg, and the other side of Bridgend. So, but I haven't conferred with the Avon Valley councillors there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Tower Clement Williams, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to speak on this, but to back my colleagues up, as a Cwm Twrch girl born and bred, I was brought up in the very, very tip of Powys, and even then we felt like we were losing out because we were so far away from Llandrindod and Builth, and I mean, a load of our pupils had to go and stay away in the weeks to go to college. And I think this is just going to distance even more people from that. I mean, arguably Powys is way too big already geographically. So I completely concur with all my colleagues. But I think this is an attack on our way of life. This little area, including the Swansea Valley, Powys, and up to Castle, is meant to be together. Once you get to Castle, you've got a very long winding road or up over the mountain before you get up into the other areas of Powys. And it is quite remote from there. And I honestly do believe that the communities in Cwm Twrch, Ystrygynlais, Abercrave and all the others on the way up there have missed out over the years because they are so far away from the centre. So I think they do belong. They belong with us. They belong here. So thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Mayor.
If you can just bear with us, Mr. Mayor's just got some technical difficulties. He'll be back on the call now.
My apologies to that, members who had an interruption from a phone call on the on the Teams. I had to delete. Thank you. Let's try to find out who else indicated to speak.
Councillor Clark, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Clark, yeah, I can see that now. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make 2 points, really. One part that I would welcome of this is that Skewen has been put back with Neath, because it really doesn't make any sense to anybody why it's with Aberavon. There's a motorway between us and Aberavon, for goodness sake. So it's not really, doesn't make any sense. So I would like to put it on record that I think that is good. But the other thing, I wondered whether it was worth mentioning with regard to things like, the Royal Mail delivered free post addresses at election times. The Royal Mail struggle at the moment with knowing what ward is in which constituency, and to carve up Neath Talbot like this will very possibly mean that people will not be getting the correct candidates' literature. And I think that's really important that they have the correct information, and they might not get it because of the way that they've carved this up.
Right, thank you. Councillor Jane Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to Nigel Hunt. In both villages, Gwynfi and Glencorrog, we only get a bus every 2 hours to get to Cymru. Just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott Jones, please. Did you indicate, Councillor Scott Jones? Your hand was there.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Apologies, I had my microphone on. Yeah, I wasn't intending really today to speak, but only on the back of what Councillor Nigel Hunt has already advocated, because our Chief Executive has outlined, that in due course we'll have an opportunity to feed into such consultations. But on the back of what Councillor Hunt have said, I haven't received any concerns from constituents to date, from this valley or particularly from my ward. But, I think a lot has to be said in that regard, because our previous chief executive and chief officers will be aware of having to attend numerous meetings as a direct result of closures here around schools and care homes, that at such point a vast majority of residents in this valley was quite happy, because they didn't feel valued by this council, or quite happy at such point to join the part of Bridgend Council. Now, I'm not saying that would be the right way forward, but clearly, as it stands, people would be quite happy, I think, to see this boundary changing over to the Bridgend Porthcawl side. As a result, as what Councillor Hunt have said as well, that there is better transport links, that we rely on Bridgend Council subsidies for transport and other things, as opposed to what we've got here within our own county borough. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor John Miller, please.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, this issue doesn't only affect Neath Talbot, and I would advocate that we get feedback from the other councils in the surrounding areas, so that we can then make a joint decision, or at least a joint reply, etc. I hope that can be accommodated in the future, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief comment that could probably sound pedantic to us all here today is where we've actually got Aberavon and Porthcawl, we've got Brecon and Radnor, and we've got Swansea East and Neath. I would have thought that they would be in alphabetical order. Does it look as if we've been disenfranchised in Neath? Because will be Swansea rather than Neath. I know it might sound strange, but it's the way it's worded. Doesn't send out a good message. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I can't see anyone else that's indicated. I just want to say, if I can, just from the chair as the mayor, I don't want to duplicate all that is said, but all I want to say is that I think we all feel passionate this afternoon about the way people will be represented, and I share all the emotions and feelings that that you've been put into this meeting this afternoon, that you've injected. Is all I want to say on that. Can I now ask perhaps now if we could go back to the Chief Executive for comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. From what members have just said, and taking out that the points that we've outlined in the report are points that members support. I think Councillor Wilcock started off by saying that. What we will do is we'll strengthen the proposed response by reference to the points that Councillor Wilcock made around the impact on Welsh representation in Parliament, and specifically the issues about including the Upper Amman Valley and Swansea Valley into the Brecon and Radnor area. I'll also make sure that the cultural differences that Councillor Purcell referenced are built into the response. I don't know whether it is wise to make the point about potential future boundary changes. And maybe I can take some soundings off the political leadership around that, because at this moment in time there are no proposals that I'm aware of to change council structures in Wales. We've had that debate, haven't we, recently, but of course that does not rule them out in the future. And arguably, I accept the point the members are making, if you've got parliamentary boundaries drawn in a particular way, then there's always a debate that it seems to me about simplifying then administrative boundaries. So I absolutely get the point that Councillor Hunt makes. So maybe we'll have a think about how much weight we might want to base on that when we finalise the response. I think the presentation of Neath is a very strong point that a number of members have made. So yes, an alphabetical convention might be the way to sort that out, but it does seem to me that it does lose the identity of Neath in the way in which it's currently presented. But also take on board the point that Councillor Kerry Clark has made about skewing in Neath. So that is something that we can think about as well. I'm not sure about the administrative arrangements and Royal Mail. Rhys may have a particular view on that. What we are noting is there will be a lot of administrative complexity, as well as the confusion for electors and obviously the democratic issues that these proposals flag up. Just on Bridgend and the Avon Valleys, this is not a proposal to change the council boundaries, because I think there may be a bit of confusion there. This is about those Aberavon constituencies that are set out in paragraph 33 being combined with certain wards within the Bridgend area to form a new parliamentary constituency. So it isn't intended that there would be a change to the council boundaries from these proposals. But the same point that Councillor Hunt made is that, you know, there does sort of flag up a consideration, I suppose, that some people may want to use in the future. And the point that Councillor Miller finished off on in terms of surrounding councils, I don't know what those responses are, but I can certainly find out. And I would imagine there will be similar points of principle that will be raised there, but there may be some differences in point of view as well, which we'll happily bring back to Council, Mr. Mayor. The deadline on these initial proposals for response is quite tight. So what I'm proposing to do, Mr. Mayor, is that we'll include the points the members have made this afternoon that hopefully I've summarised accurately with what we've set out in this report. There will be further opportunities for members to comment on further iterations of these proposals, and it is of course open to members to individually write back to the Boundary Commission with their own views, and for political groups to do so as well. So I think where there's a real strength of feeling, I really would encourage members to make use of as many avenues as possible to get your point across.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Can I ask you, Council, from what the Chief Executive has come back to you with, and comments, what some of them that will be encapsulated into the recommendations, does that command your support?
I move, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I now refer members to a recommendation on page 66 of the report. Can I ask for a proposal and a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll move on that, Mr. Mayor.
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Council, If you do not indicate to the contrary by raising your electronic hand, it will be assumed that you are in favour of the recommendations.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Mr. Mayor, so that recommendation and Karen's inclusions have been approved.
Thank you, Jane. Now refer to item 7 on the agenda, which is notice of motion. I have received no notice of motions for today's meeting. Agenda item 8 is questions from members under Rule 9.2. I have received no questions for today's meeting. I have no urgent items for today's meeting. That ends with business for today's council. Thank you, members, for all your participation today and for attending the meeting.
Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Mr Mayor.
Thank you.